What is up, everybody? It's Goomer22 here with a classic playoff vid for the VDL. I've done these in the past, typically around the end of week 6 or 7. It's a little more defined at the end of week 7, but at the end of week 6, you can still look at some stuff and see what you might need to do to make playoffs. And there's a lot more possibilities, basically, which is interesting, but it's harder to analyze. But yeah, this is going to be my scuffed playoff talk here. So yeah, I guess let's just jump into it. I'm going to go by divisions, talk about those, and then just talk about the kind of wild card, the wild cards as is, and like the best and worst records that could potentially miss or make playoffs. So stay tuned for that, and yeah, let's just jump into it, I guess. So starting with Ruby, as you can see, I've got these symbols here showing who the last divisional match is, because week 7 is a divisional match, and then week 8 is an out of division match. So for any given division, you have one more divisional match, and then your whole division could get a win that last week, or your whole division could get a loss. So it gets really interesting. So either the Tricos or the Pretzels are guaranteed first seed because they play each other, and so one of them has to get a win here, and no one else can get to 6-2 or to 6 wins, basically. So the interesting thing is because of differential, because the Tricos have 2 more than the Pretzels. If the Tricos win, they're guaranteed first. But if the Pretzels win, that's where it gets tricky because, if the Pretzels win, let's say, 2-0, and so then they're +8 and the Tricos are +6. But then, the Tricos win 2-0 and the Pretzels lose 2-0 in week 8, it flips back to +8, +6, like they are now, and they'll both have 6 wins. So, yeah, because of the differential, Tricos are in a much better position. So Pretzels need to win if they want to take that first seed. Binacles or Scraggies could actually take second seed. They need 2 wins, and then whoever loses that match between the Tricos and the Pretzels whoever loses that match, they need to lose again. Because let's say the Tricos lose 0-2, and then they lose 0-2 again, right? So they'd be 5-3 +4. Well, let's say the Binacles win 2-0 and then win 2-0. They'd be 5-3 +5. So whoever loses whoever loses between week 7 between the Pretzels and Tricos, the Binacles and the Scraggies, they want them to lose again. And then the Arcanines need to win out if they want to have a shot at wild card. Yeah, I would most likely 2-0 wins. To get to that positive differential. Although they could take a 2-1 win, 4-4 +0 is still possible. So, they can afford to lose a game, but not a set. Manitans are looking for their first win, so still a big game for them this week 7. But unfortunately, no playoff implications there. But I always find it interesting for these, for the teams that are out of playoffs. It's always nice to see them either get their wins if they don't have one in these final weeks, so that everybody ends with a win, or just to shake things up and potentially knock a wild card contender out. So really interesting for those teams. So that's Ruby. Let's jump into Sapphire. Sapphire, again, we have the first and second seed playing each other. Either the Sauces or the Ice Cubes are guaranteed first. And because their differential is only by 1, it's either one is not necessarily guaranteed first seed. Actually, let me go back to this one. Yeah, because if Otto wins 2-1, he'll be +9, and Pretzels will be +5. And then uh, if Otto loses, he'll go from +9 to, and let's say he loses 0-2. He'll go from +9 to +7. Pretzels will go from +5 to +7 if they win 2-0, but Tricos have the head-to-head. So yeah, because of that 2 differential, Trico's a guaranteed win if they get a win. And then for Sapphire, yeah, because of this, because they're only 1 away, it gets tricky, right? So, let's say Ice Cubes beat the Sauces 2-1. So now it's +8 to +5. But then in that last week, let's say the Ice Cubes lose 0-2, the Sauces win 2-0. Instead of that differential being +8 to +5, now the +8 goes to +6, +5 goes to +7, and Sauces would take first on differential. So it's not necessarily clear who will get first seed, although whoever does get first seed obviously has a head-to-head tiebreaker and is in very, very good position to take first. The Wailords could actually take second. So here I show if they win both weeks 2-0, they'll end 5-3 +3. And if Sauces lose both weeks 0-2, they'll be 5-3 +2. So Wailords would be ahead there. And then Dracosults and Stabilize need to win out to have a chance at wildcard. And they both do have a chance at wildcard, which is really interesting to me to see a division where, I don't know if this has happened before, but to see a division where all 6 teams could potentially make playoffs. All 6 teams, it's not like all 4 wildcards are going to come from this division, but at this point, all 6 have a potential to make it. So that's pretty interesting to me. So yeah, I don't know if we've had that before, but 4 and 4 plus 0 is definitely possible. I've looked at it. So yeah, let's jump into the next one. Oh, I kept it as Sapphire. It's Diamond. Oh, excuse my my laziness there. All right, so Sapphire V2, aka Diamond. Blazikins winning guarantees first seed, because if they win, they're facing the Sun Warriors again, facing the second seed. If they win 2-1, so they go up 1, they'll be 6-1 +6, and the Sun Warriors will be +2, and even if they lose, and the Sun Warriors win week 8, they'll both end with the same differential. Let's say it's a 2-0 loss for the Blazikins and a 2-0 win for the Sun Warriors. In week 8, they would both end 6-2 +4. And because Blazikins have head-to-head, they keep first. So Blazikins winning guarantees first seed. Sun Warriors, Kingdras, and interestingly, Porygons can still all take first. So I tried to lay out the Porygon scenario because that seems like the most unlikely here. So let's say the Sun Warriors win 2-1 and the Porygons win 2-0. So then here's what it would be at the end of week 7. You'd have Blazikins 5-2 +4, Sun Warriors 5-2 +4, Kingdras 3-4 +1, Porygons 4-3 +1. So that's the end of week 7. And then week 8, because it's out of the division, anything can happen. So Porygons win 2-0. So then they end at 5-3 +3. So if they're 5-3 +3, and then so if they're 5-3 +3, and then the Blazikins and the Sun Warriors both lose, will they be 5-3 +2? So it is possible for Porygons to take first, which is kind of interesting. The other interesting thing about this division is that Rebellion 2-4 -4 can take second. So I didn't lay it out like the Porygons here, but basically, if you look at it here, the worst that teams can do is lose 4 points of differential if they lose both weeks 0-4, or if they lose both weeks 0-2. So like the Sun Warriors, let's say they lose both weeks 0-2, they drop to 4-4 -1, and then if Rebellion wins both of their weeks, 2-0, they end at 4-4 or +0. So they're ahead of the Sun Warriors there. So then to be ahead of the Kingdras and the Porygons, well, they need the Kingdras to lose both weeks because the Kingdras have such a good differential. So they need the Kingdras to lose both weeks, and then they need the Porygons to just lose week 8, because if the Kingdras are losing both weeks, that means the Porygons are winning in week 7 because they face each other. So basically, Rebellion needs to win out 2-0, and then Sun Warriors lose out 2-0, and then Porygons beat the Kingdras. Kingdras lose again in week 8. Porygons also lose in week 8. And then you have a scenario where Rebellion at 4-4 +0 takes second seed, which I feel like last season Batista may have taken second seed with 4-4. So I don't think that is a new thing for a 4-4 to take a second seed. But that's really interesting to me. And then let's go to Pearl, final division here. So Gurchin's winning one more game guarantees first seed because they beat the Mimikyus earlier in the season, so they have head-to-head. So whether the Gurchins win week 7 or week 8, they will take the first seed because of their differential over the Mimikyus. Interestingly, the Mimikyus, Bashers, or Soars can all take first, so long as the Gurchins lose both weeks. And Bashers and Soars would both have to win both weeks. Mimikyus would only have to win one of the weeks. But it's interesting. Now, obviously, if the Bashers win over the Gurchins this week, then they just have to win that last week and hope the Gurchins lose. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. And second place is also still a toss-up because the Soars need to win, obviously, to have a chance because they're facing the second seed right now, the Mimikyus. And if they do that, they'll have a head-to-head on the Mimikyus. But it's really interesting because, so let's say me, the Bashers, and the Soars both win, right? So then the Mimikyus, Bashers, and Soars are all going into week 8 with 4 wins. Well, it's really interesting because the Soars will have the head-to-head on Mimikyus. Mimikyus will have head-to-head on Bashers, and Bashers will have head-to-head on Soars. So there's like this triangle of head-to-head tiebreakers we've got going on, and we could all have 4 wins going into week 8. So that could be kind of a crazy scenario too, to see how the second seed ends up. So that's pretty interesting. And the other interesting part about that is if that scenario were to occur, where we all have 4 wins going into week 8, that would inevitably mean that I beat the Gurchins, meaning that they'd be at 5-2, meaning that both me, the Bashers, and the Soars would have an opportunity to take first as well. So we'd be in the opportunity to take first or second there with a win. So it's kind of interesting. So those are all of the divisional games. We've got Infernape versus Uxie down here too, which is interesting because Uxie looking for their first win. The only other team, I think, them and the Mantans, looking for their first win here. But these are all the divisional games, and so we can take a broad look now at the overall league and talk about the current wild cards and best ending record and worst record to potentially make playoffs. So as it stands, the wild cards would be the Binacles at 3-3 +1, the Kingdras at 3-3 +3, the Bashers and the Soars at 3-3 +1 as well. So it doesn't, for some people miss this sometimes, but the wild cards are not the yellows. The yellows designate that there is a wild card, but whoever's highlighted in yellow is just third in the division right now. The way wildcards work in the VDL-V Create is the top 4 records from all the divisions. So even though like Whale Lords are highlighted in yellow right now, the Soars over in Pearl have a better record, so they would actually get that wild card slot if it ended right now. Now, another interesting thing is because we have 2 more weeks, like if everything sort of stays the same as it is now, let's say teams that win in week 7 lose in week 8, or vice versa. So things stay relatively the same. The most that differentials can shift is by 1 up or down. Because if a team wins and then loses, either they win 2-0, lose 0-2, or they they win 2-1. If they win 2-0 and lose 0-2, they stay the same differential that they're at now. If they win 2-0 and then lose 1-2, well, they just got a +2 and then a -1. So they netted a +1 over those 2 weeks. But the reverse can happen as well, where they win 2-1, so they get a +1, and then they lose 0-2, so they get a -2. So they netted a -1 over those 2 weeks. So if you're trying to compare yourself to anyone differential-wise, you can really only have a chance to, if you stay with a similar record, you can really only have a chance to beat out that person in wild card if they're within 1 differential away, assuming that things sort of stay even, right? So I think a good example of this is like me, the Bashers versus the Kingdras. So we're both 3-3, right? So if I win in week 8 and the Kingdras lose, let's say I win 2-0, they lose 0-2. So now I'm at +3, they're at +1. But then that final week, the best I can hope for is that if they win, is that they only win 2-1. And then I lose. If I lose, the best case scenario is I lose 1-2. Well, if that happens, they go to, 4-4 +2. I would end at 4-4 +2. So I can't really edge them out. I can tie them, but my differential, if I win a game and lose a game, can only change by 1. Same with their differential. It can only change by 1 if they win a game, lose a game. So then they would, their worst case scenario would be +2. My best case scenario is +2 in that win a game, lose a game scenario. And they have the head-to-head over me, so they would take that. But yeah, so you can tie someone who's 2 differential away if you win a game, lose a game. And the only reason I talk about that is because on average, you would think somebody wins a game, loses a game, averages out. So just something to think about, because even if that happens, the differential can shift a little bit. Anyways, so these are the current wild cards. So the best ending record to potentially miss playoffs is 5-3 +3, which is just so interesting because we have 8 3-3 teams. There's so much variability right now, because if a lot of these teams win, well, then you have a lot of people competing at 5-3. If a lot of these teams win out, if some of these teams lose, if a lot of these teams lose, well, then it opens up the door for 4-4s to make playoffs. So there's a lot of variability here. Typically I don't think we've ever had a 5-3 miss playoffs, if that's any consolation for these teams who are looking to get 5 wins. I don't think a 5-3 has ever missed playoffs in VDL, but it could happen, like here. So for example, the Scraggies could win out. They could be 5-3 +4. The Binacles could win out. They could be 5-3 +5. And then let's say the Kingdras and the Croydon Soars both win out. So then you have 5-3 +7 and 5-3 +4 or 5. 5-3 +5. So the Soars, the Kingdras, the Binacles, and the Scraggies would all at least have 5-3 4. And then if that happens, let's say you have a team like the Whalelords who wins out 2-0, 2-0. Well, they'd be at 5-3 plus 3. So that is the worst. That is the best kind of ending record to potentially miss playoffs. Now, the reason I didn't include myself in there, 3-3 plus 1, is because I actually faced the Binacles, so we both can't win out. So we can't both end at 5-3 plus 4. So one of us has to lose. But you know, there is a possibility of 4 teams ending at 5-3 plus 4 or better. And then you assume that this is assuming that the first and second seeds in all of these, they maybe lose a game, win a game, or something like that. Because if the Soars win out, that would mean the Mimikyus would have to lose a game, then win a game. But if they do that, they'd still end at 5-3, plus 3 or something like that. So maybe they would miss playoffs, and maybe Whalelords would make playoffs. Who knows? That's the best record to potentially miss playoffs, is 5-3. If somebody finds out it's differently, let me know. But I don't think that there are 4 teams who can, or I don't think there are 5 teams that can end 5-3 plus 4. I don't think there are 5 teams that can end 5-3 plus 4 in wildcard contention. That is. So the worst record to potentially make playoffs. Well, like we talked about in Diamond, we have Rebellion can take second seed if they pick up 2-2-0 wins and end at 4-4 plus 0. So they can definitely still make playoffs. And then and they can also make the wild card too. And this also applies to the Sableyes because they're 2-4 minus 4. If they win out and they end 4-4 plus 0, they just need a lot of these 3-3 teams to lose a game, win a game, and but lose differential. But they also need that these lower, these lower seed, or these lower differential teams to win a game, lose a game, right? So, for example, let's say the Porygons beat the Kingdras and then lose, and they stay at 4-4 minus 1. Well, if you have somebody like the Sableyes winning 2 games, and 2-0, you'll end 4-4 plus 0. So that helps a lot. And same with the Whalelords. Let's say the Whalelords lose and then win, say at same differential, they'll be at 4-4 minus 1, and Sableyes will beat them out. So it really just depends on some of these 3-3 teams, and how the differential goes. There's way too many scenarios to get into right now, but the fact that there's 4 3-3 teams at here's a better way to say it. There's only one 3-3 team who will automatically beat these 4-4 teams if they end 4-4, and that's the Kingdras. Because if the Kingdras, the worst the Kingdras can end is 4-4 plus 2 if they win a game. If the Kingdras win a game, the worst they can end is 4-4 plus 2. Anybody else here, can shift by a differential. So me and the Binacles and the Soars, we're all plus 1, but we could end at plus 0. So, because if we win a game 2-1, we go up plus 1, and then we lose a game 0-2, then we end at 4-4 plus 0. So, a ton of these 3-3 teams can end at plus 0, which then it comes down to head-to-head tiebreakers, and then it gets tricky. But yeah, there's so many possibilities. It's just a lot to get into. So, but if you're 2-4, don't think you're out of it. So, Arcanines, Dracozolt, Sableyes, Rebellion, you still got a shot. And yeah, so I'm really excited to see how these playoffs, these playoff teams end up. But both within the divisions and then like the wild cards. And I think we're gonna have a crazy season. It's already been pretty crazy so far, so I'm excited for it. And good luck to everybody. We will talk to you next week for the next playoff scenarios once we've seen the week 6 results or the week 7 results. So, Goomer 22 out.